I'd like to welcome you here to our webinar today. My name's Donna and I'm going to be taking you through rooms and equipment in Kitomba and how to set it up and how useful it will be for you. Okay, I'm just going to go through a bit of housekeeping first. If you've got any questions as we go through, you can either raise your hand with the hand icon on your control panel, or you can pop a question into the question pane, again on your control panel on your device. It's actually easier if you can just pop that question into the question pane for me as we go through, and then we can get to those questions at the end of the session. So let's move on to our first slide. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the benefits of using the feature on Kitomba. So firstly, it saves the double booking of rooms or equipment, especially if you have, for example, you might only have one microdermabrasion machine or one IPL machine, and you move it from room to room, and it might be used by 3 different operators. Okay, so in fact, if you have a particular room that only has one piece of machinery in it, okay, it also means that if you have a staff member who isn't particularly proficient in a service or isn't qualified to perform the service, you can make them not capable of being booked to do that treatment or use that piece of machinery. It means that you as the owner can have control over your business. The other great benefit is that this will help you to keep your staff. Now, I can hear you saying, well, how does that work? Staff motivation is influenced by some of the following factors: having the right person in the job, who is capable of doing it, equipping them to do the job by giving them the right tools, and then, of course, providing the support for them to actually succeed in their role. There's been studies done in lots of universities, and it's been revealed that happier workers use their time more effectively, increasing the pace which they worked without actually sacrificing any of the quality. So in other words, they're more productive. Now, that's got to be a good thing for you in your salon or clinic. Better productivity, better bottom line. So let's have a look at how we set all this up. Okay, so before we just get into too much of the detail, I just want to relate a story for you, and I'm sure that you can identify with this. Jane rushes through the salon door, and it's obvious that she's just not having a great day. You can just tell. Okay, you hear her talking on the phone to someone, and it's obviously a bad day for her. You think to yourself, okay, this is a perfect day for her to visit. I'm going to make her day with a massage, and she will leave her with her world back on an even keel and feel wonderful. Okay. As you go to check the room, you find that somebody else has just gone in with their customer, and they're going to be at least 30 minutes. You now have to go and tell your already unhappy customer that she will need to wait or rebook. Scenario can and does happen from time to time, but by using rooms and equipment, you can actually minimize that a great deal. Rooms and equipment has been developed so that you can easily identify which rooms and equipment are in use at any given time and ensure that you have a room or equipment available when your client arrives. Now, this feature allows you to assign a room or a piece of equipment to an appointment. Okay, so you can book it out. You can add a room and equipment by selecting the Add Room Equipment in the Admin tab, and then select Business Units. There's a button at the bottom of the page. You can then give this particular room or equipment a name. In this case, so we're looking up here, you would put the name in here. So it could be the blue room, or whatever that makes sense to you. You can have treatment room, tanning room, whatever. Now, the description underneath here is actually optional, but it's quite important. If you've got a room, if you've got several rooms and you want to identify it, instead of just saying room 1, 2, and 3, you could actually say in the description that it's the room nearest the storeroom or something like that. That just helps you to identify it. The next thing you need to do is choose a colour. Okay, so we put our colour here. There's a list of colours that you can choose from. Now, if you need a staff person to be booked at the same time as the room or equipment is booked, then make sure that this little box here is ticked. A massage room is a good example of this. You need a therapist in the massage room for the service to go ahead. Okay, so fairly self-explanatory. As with Kitomba, it has lots of little tips around it to just help you to know what you need to do. You know, you can have the option to set the room or equipment up to have its own column in the appointment or book or calendar. And this can be really useful if you want to be able to book out a service directly on the room or equipment without having to involve a staff member, for example. Now, to do this, simply leave that box there unticked, and if you have set the room up or equipment up to not require a staff member, then the room or equipment will have its own calendar column, and we can show you that. So moving on to our next slide. So here we've got our tanning room, just to show you there. So it would just be alongside your stylists or therapists, so the tanning room would have its own column. I think that's a good example because you don't actually have to have a therapist in there with you at all time. So let's move on to our next slide. So setting up rooms and equipment capabilities is just the same as you would set up your staff who are capable of doing watch services. For example, a massage room would have the capability of all massage services, but not tanning or laser treatments. Now you'll see your rooms and equipments as columns with your services as rows. So you can see here in my example. Okay, so we've got our massage room here and the tanning booth and so on. Now we've said here in our example that our massage room can be used for the service massage 1 hour. So I've got this down here just to show you. But we've said our tanning booth can't be used for that. So when you go to make an appointment with that, it's going to tell you that that room's not set up for that. By setting the capabilities of each room and equipment, you can avoid booking the wrong type of room or equipment for the wrong service. And let's move on to our next slide. Okay, so we've got a few pictures on here. I'm just going to go through them. So when you go to select the room or equipment for an appointment, if the room name shows up in red, this means that the room or equipment is not capable of providing or being used for that service. Remember, I just talked about that. In this example, the equipment sunbed, okay, so you can see that here in our top little picture. So it's come up with red. It's not capable of being booked out to service a leg wax. Okay, so that's the indication that that room hasn't got that equipment or capability there, just by looking at the red words. If you do try to book out a service with a room that hasn't been given that capability, you're going to get a message just like this. So it's very obvious that this room is not the appropriate room. Now you can still book it. You can just click on here and you can book the room anyway, or the appointment anyway, or you can cancel and find another room. Each different colour represents a different room. If you have 2 appointments double booked with the same room, then the coloured bar on the appointment will appear in stripes. So if you look down here, okay, if it's been double booked, and it is unfortunate that you still can book the room, but it's going to show in stripes. So if you've got stripes on the side, then that room is also been booked for another appointment. So another way of assigning a room or equipment to an appointment is by right-clicking on the appointment, selecting Change Room Equipment, and selecting an available room or equipment. So you can just go in and change that. So you can just pop back in here and switch to another room if you needed to. And any unavailable rooms or equipment will show in grey. So we can see here that that one's not available. So when you actually go to set the appointment, it's going to clearly identify when you go to select the room, when you're in the appointment, it's going to show you that room's not available. Now you can still do it, but of course that's when you're going to get your diagonal lines in the actual appointment in your calendar. And let's move on to our next page. Okay, so if you have a service that requires a room or equipment to be booked, you need to set this up in the Cards tab under Services. Now make sure that the Requires Room or Equipment checkbox is ticked, and that's this one down here. This will then make sure that you are making the appointment that you will be reminded to book a room. So when you do actually go in and create the appointment for your customer, it's going to come up with a message saying, hey, you need a room for this service. Now in this example, the main colour over here is the service strip of the room. Okay, so this is what the service is about for that colour. Okay, there is a tick box in the Preferences in the Admin tab that you can use to determine what the colour of the appointment uses. So if you haven't played around with that, go in and have a look and see what you can do. That's in the Admin tab under Preferences. Okay, if a room or equipment has not been assigned for a service, which has been set to require a room or equipment, then the bar, as you can see here on my example, is going to be white with a question mark in it. Now this means you will need to find a room that is suitable for the service that this person wants. So again, lots of visual clues about making sure you've got the right room and the right equipment booked for that service. Okay, you can see quite clearly in here that we've got lots of colours on the screen. Okay, remember the service is the main colour here, and the room or equipment is represented by the coloured bar on the left-hand side. Okay, of course, if you don't have rooms or equipment set up, you're not going to see any of those bars. It's just going to be a straight, plain colour like this one here. The appointments in our bottom example here, while we're down here, colour based on the rooms and equipment that are booked for the appointment time. Okay, so you could actually not worry about having the colours showing for your service, but it could just be indicating to you what the room is that's booked. Okay, so for example here we've got Paul, and we know that he's probably in the pink room, and he's going to have a massage, whereas Cindy's in the blue room, and so on. Whereas up in this example, we know that there's a service here, and they're in wherever the room might be, but we'll say it's the blue room. So it's just those visual indicators of what's going on. It's what you decide. It's about you having control of what's happening for you, what works best for your business. Okay, let's move on to our next one. Now, just moving from Kitomba into K1, as you know, I'm a bit of a fan of K1, so just to tell you how it works here as well. Okay, so the principle is similar. You select the products tab, then services, and then you select the service you want from the list. Okay, so we go in and you do that from here. Make sure that you check the requires a room and equipment. So we're over here, so this would be our service. It would pop up, and we'd go in here. Okay, we're going to make sure that that bottom box is ticked to make sure that when we book an appointment, it's going to say you require a room or equipment for that service. And we're just going to move on to our next slide here. Okay, now if you're dragging the appointment to another column, you can easily see who's capable of doing this particular service or not. It's a really cool feature that pops up and lets you know what's happening. Okay, and you'll see here that we've got Carolyn. We're dragging the appointment to Carolyn's column, and it's popped up saying that she's not capable of doing this. So it's very clear, tells you quite clear with the red box saying that this staff person is not able to do this particular service. Okay. So any questions on that so far? I'm just going to come back a couple of slides just to do a bit of a summary of what we've covered. Okay, so the important thing is to go into your rooms and equipment, make sure you've got a name, make sure you've got a description that actually means something for you. So when you come back in a few months' time, you think, well, why did I call it that? And the description is going to help you with that, and put it in a colour that's meaningful. I like the idea of having, if I've got a blue room, it's a blue room. Here at Kitomba, we have our meeting rooms named after the colours that they are, so it's the blue room or the green room, and so on. It just makes sense for us. Makes it easy to remember which room you're going to as well. The other thing to make sure is whether you want it to assign the room to its own column, or whether you don't need to do that. It's all about making sure the box is ticked or unticked. The next part of this is making sure that the room actually has the capabilities. It might not be suitable for certain treatments and so on. So you can do that very quickly, just the same as you can do it for your staff. And if you haven't got your staff set up with their capabilities, then go and have a look at that as well. It makes it so easy for you when you're making appointments, because Kitomba will tell you whether they're actually capable of providing that service, whether it be a room or equipment or a staff member. So let's move on to our next one. Okay, and this is of course going to remind you, and the thing to look out for when you're booking rooms or equipment is if it's in red, then it's already booked. Okay, while we'll tell you that it's booked, we're not going to prevent you double booking, so just be aware of that and go by the colour cues to let you know what's going on with your equipment in your rooms. The next stage, of course, is to have a look, and again it's about making sure the right boxes are ticked, and that's with anything in Kitomba, as long as you've got it all set up. And I know it takes some time, but once it's all set up, it takes care of itself and takes so much more time and pressure off you on your day-to-day business. Okay, and we'll move on to our next slide just to remind you, okay, the difference between a service with a room, here's the colour bar, whereas if you've just got the room or equipment showing, then it's going to just be a plain block of colour. Okay, Kitomba 1, principle's the same, slightly different places to tick the boxes. And that brings us back to our last one, of course. And I think this is a really cool feature. It's one that's really helpful for a lot of, especially our beauty customers. We had a lot of beauty customers saying how important it is to them to have their rooms booked out, and so on. So any questions from anyone today? Okay. Cool. Rooms and equipment. It's really simple, really easy. Really short little session today. I hope it's been of some use and helpful for you. If you've got any questions about it, or you get stuck halfway and you think, oh, it's just not working right, then don't forget you can always call the help desk and the guys here will be happy to take you through it. But have a go first. It's really not that difficult and it's going to make a difference for you. And remember about your staff. Okay, it's really important to get your staff engaged and keep them working and keep them happy. One of the things that I've done in a previous role is analyse staff satisfaction surveys. And it didn't matter which kind of survey I used. One of the core questions is always, do you have the right tools and equipment for your job? Some of the surveys, this is actually the foundation block to being a good employer or to have in good employee relationships. Happy staff make a huge difference to your business. Yeah, I recommend that you check out these ways of keeping your staff smiling. We have some things on our website that's going to help you with that, so check out our blogs. And in the meantime, that's it from me. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hope you'll join with us again next time. Thank you.